YouTube's a bit slow.
It's okay. We're waiting.
Yeah, we're live.
Okay, thanks, Bhumika. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the next PyLadies Amsterdam session. Today we have really interesting topic, which is, you will know in a nutshell what's going on here. Before we start, a couple of ground rules. So nice to see you all. Don't forget to mute yourself and switch off your video so there are no other distractions during the workshop. The chat will be open for any questions. At the end, we have more time. Probably we open chat for additional Q&A. So during the workshop, as if you want to ask a question, you can just drop a message in the chat. And if it's something urgent, I couldn't wait, we're gonna ask our speaker and workshop giver today to answer it. If it's something that could wait, then we definitely get back to it later. In case, for example, this question probably will be covered with the materials of the workshop further. So we are PyLadies Amsterdam. Some of you know us, somebody is completely new. We are part of a global PyLadies Amsterdam chapter. We are a local chapter of global PyLadies. What we usually do, we act on diversity in technology. Our participants are Pythonistas from all over the world. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're interested in learning Python and applying Python in different domains, you're free to go. What we aim to do still, we aim to give the podium to underrepresented groups in tech. So we aim that our workshops and sometimes talks are given by different people. So you see a variety that we have in our community. And I think without further ado, I can pass to another co-organizer of PyLadies Amsterdam, to Bhumika.
Hi, I'm Bhumika.
And switch off her camera. It will be really nice if Bhumika and the speaker will literally start their camera, so you will see you.
Yeah. Okay. So it's my honor to introduce the speaker, Swaranjali. She is a software developer, specifically backend developer at Box. And she also learned a lot of development through meetups. So we're glad that she's here. And yeah, Swaranjali, the floor is all yours.
Cool. Swaranjali.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we've seen you and we're gonna help you all along the way.
Yes, thank you. And do you see my presentation?
Yeah, if it just starts the presentation. Yeah. Only one thing we see it in this, weird mode, which is eventually if you're using two screens, are you using two screens?
Yeah, I have two screens.
Yeah, so probably you can share another one, because what we see the presentation in the flow for when you have two screens. Yeah.
What do you see now?
Okay, if you start sharing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and if you click on this presentation mode. We still see it. Okay.
Yeah.
Swap displays. Yes. Thanks, Lance.
I'll go with this. I think.
Okay, whatever you feel comfortable.
Yeah. Okay. I'm Swaranjali, and I'm a software developer at Box. I'm today here to give you a workshop or a presentation for Django Rest Framework. I'm doing it with my in collaboration with PyLadies Amsterdam and Box. The Box is the place where I work, and it's a US-based organization with a small portion in Amsterdam. It's a secure platform for all the content for an organization. Like, for example, like in today's digital-first world, we have businesses that work from anywhere, and that's where Box comes into picture, like with security and a platform to manage all the content. Then we also have like multiple products like Sign, Canvas, which is like a visual workflow collaboration. So this is what Box does, and then I'm going to move further towards the agenda. So since I'm going to present about Django Rest Framework, I'll start with what is an API is. It's basically the application programming interface, and then like architecturally, people just describe it as like a client and server, how do you call it, the client and server connection. So a software program that requests data is usually termed as a client, and the software component which responds with like a response or data, it is termed as a server. And these are, and APIs usually are like they have definitions and protocols to uh, like communicate with each other. Um, and yes, so crude or crud, like people pronounce it, these are this can be described as a definition or a protocol through which APIs talk to each other. So C stands for like creation. This is the process of creating a record in the database, and in the programming world, we usually refer it by like the post method. So R stands for retrieving information from the database, and it's usually referred by an HTTP method called get. U is updating, so it's basically modifying the information in the database, and the HTTP methods for these are like put and patch. And D is for deleting a record from the database, for example. And yeah, the HTTP method is like delete. So this is what the CRUD operations are. Moving further, like what is Django? So Django is a Python-based web framework, so which has like a lot of utilities out of box with it. For example, user logins, database connections, all of that. So it makes like web development like really easy, since most of it comes out of box with the framework. And Django follows the MBT pattern. So M is like models, so it is everything database. For example, like you can write what kind of fields you want in a table, or how the data should behave when we store the data. V stand for views. So views is how do you call it? It's like a handler which accepts requests and then performs operations and gives data back to the user. T for Django is a template. It's like a file, like a text file or an HTML file, which has content which needs to be presented to the user, and it also has a logic in how and what way it should be presented. And Django supports ORM, that's object relational mapping. So object relational mapping is basically, in simple words, it's anything that connects your object-oriented programming to the database. So you don't have to do like the SQL and anything, the background processes creating maybe a database, creating a table in the database. So ORM is that. Moving further, like what is Django Rest Framework? So this is what we are going to do today. So it is also a Python-based framework, but it is built on top of Django. So for example, like requests, like software components request data from another software components, and we usually hit like an URL pattern, or like we call an endpoint, and these are processed by views, and views in turn talk to serializers or models. Depends on your use case, so like based on the HTTP methods, and then the models talk with the database. That's where we get the data from, and then we return it back to the view, and the response is sent to the requesting software. When and why to use DRF? So if you're using Django as your development framework for web development framework, then Django REST framework would be like your go-to choice. And apart from that, DRF also offers a lot of features like a web browsable API that we will see soon. It also has like an authentication and authorization methods, and it supports OAuth 2. It has built-in serialization, and it supports versioning and documentation. And also it has a really large community with lots of documentation. Thinking of serialization. So Serializers are basically responsible for accepting uh, accepting JSON data from the internet and converting it to the Python form, and then also talking to the database at the same time. So basically, it's just converting complex data types um, to and fro. Like it does in both the ways. It serializes as well as deserializes data. Uh, I think I can now start with the coding exercise. Um, Let me bring up my terminal. So I'm in a directory and I have a virtual environment activated. So I'm just going to install Django first. And I'm going to install Django Rest Framework. So these are the two packages that we will need today. That's it. So I'm going to create a new project. We can do that with Django admin. And I'm going to name it as DRF. So let's open it on the IDE. So now we have a project named DRF. So this is the boilerplate template for any project that you create with Django admin. So it has settings and URLs and the whiskey. Inside this, I'm going to move to DRF and I'm going to create an application. So what we did before was we created a project, and within a project we can have multiple applications that do their own thing, or also they can talk to each other. So
And just sorry for interruption. If you show me your Visual Studio Code, could you zoom it in because it's a little bit too small?
Is it better?
Yes, thanks a lot. Yes, great.
Okay, yeah, so I'm going to start creating one application right now. So we will use the manage.py. This is the utility from Django, which it's like a command line utility. So we are going to utilize that one and we create an application. So we do start app. I'm going to create an application with sports. So now we see like there's one more directory here in sports. And if you go, like, let's start with the models. So models, like I said, it's like everything database, and we can introduce fields here, or like all the behavior that we want our application to do with the database. So I'm going to start creating a class here, which will say like sports, and this is going to inherit from the models from here. So this is model start model. Um, in normal SQL, what we do is like we do things like create table for sports maybe, and then we say whatever attributes we want it to be, like name, and then we say varchar, something like this. So we don't have to do all of this since Django has its own ORM, and what it's going to be really easy. We just write the fields here. So for example, we say name. We want the name for the sports, and we say models dot text careful. Let's go with careful. And we can also like the same way like we do it with the create statement with SQL. We can also say the max length that we want here. I'm going to go with 100. Let's give another attribute here, maybe a description. Also get field. let's give another attribute, maybe number of players. So this is going to be like an integer field. So these choices are available in the models class from Django. Um, let's also give like type sport. I'm going to go here with like an indoor sport or an outdoor sport, and this could be okay. Let's give choices for the user here. Let's say sport type choices. It, uh, when you give choices, it's generally a tuple with the choices that you want to give. Let's go with indoor and outdoor here. And then what you want to do here is, it's still a char field, right? And then you want to do is max length. Again, go again with 100 and choices. Yeah. And then we can refer to the sport type choices that we have here. So, yeah. So that's our model. So this is going to create a table with name sports in the database. What we also need to do is, this is just a description of the table that we want, but in the background we want this table to be converted into an SQL statement, and then this statement, and this needs to be executed on the database to create a table. So to do that, we have to create what we call as migration in Django. So we do like before that, since we created this. Okay, yeah, so I was saying, like, before doing the migrations, we want to register our app in the settings. So we do that in the installed apps list in the settings file for the project. So I'm going to go ahead and write sports, and at the same time we also need to register REST framework here, because we're using the framework here for serialization. Okay. Yeah. So let's go ahead and create the migration. So Python manage.py make migrations. So make migrations will create the SQL that needs to be performed on the database. So we have sports and we have this migration ready. You can see it also here in the migrations directory. So it says that create model named sports, and these are the fields. So that's what it does. And now let's migrate it. So this is where the database will be populated with the table named sports. Yeah, and these are the other are like that comes out of box with Django. Okay, so we have the migration and we have the model ready. Let's go to the views. So this is going to be our handler which accepts the request. So views can be of two types, like it could be function based, it could be class based. So for this exercise, we will do function based views. So let's start with that. Let's say a function named sports. I have in my mind, like we want to get all the list of all the sports from the database. So let's name it as sports list maybe, and then we accept the parameter as a request. Okay, so what we want to return is the list of sports that we have in the database. We are going to do that with an ORM, like a query, Django query, which we want is to retrieve all the data from the database. So what we will need here is import the model that we just created, the sports model. So we are going to do like from sports dot models import sports. So now we can use this to make a query towards the database and get the list of all the sports that we have. So sports dot objects dot all. So objects is a model manager which comes out of the box with Django. So you can also define your own custom managers, but this is the mostly used model manager, and all is the method on top of it, which will bring the whole list of sports to us. So now this is a complex data type. We want it to be converted to something that Python will understand and then forward it as a JSON response. So this is where the serializer will come into picture. And this is where Django Rest Framework starts. So what we want to do is we want to create a file, serializers.py. And we want to, from REST framework, okay. Yeah, so from REST framework.serializers, we want to import serializer, and we will be inheriting this class from Django. Let's create a class saying sports serializer. And sorry, serializer. I think I can just import serializers directly from here. Serializers, and then I want to use the serializer class. So in the serializer, we want to say like which fields we want to return as a response, which fields we want to accept as a request. So we will define all of them here. So what Django does is when you create a database model or a database table, it also creates a column named ID, which is usually the primary key. So we want to include that as well, and we can do similar like we did in the model. We just did like models.char field. We are also going to do that also in the serializer. So since this is just the serializer, we will have to describe all the fields all over again. But there is a way out of it. Like we shouldn't be doing that, but I'll do that in the next exercise, and I can show that we can minimize the code with model serializers. But for now, let's go with this. And then I want to get everything from here. Let's copy this here. Yeah, it's just going to be serializers. And we don't need this. And also not these, because these are the model properties. Okay. Going back to our view, now we want to feed this data that we got from sports to the serializer. So what we are going to do is, so serializer, let's call it a serializer also here. And then we want to import the serializer that we just created from sports.serializers. And we will pass this as a parameter here. Sorry. Sports. And since this is going to be a list of many objects, not just one, we have also to say many equals to true here. And then we return response. So I want also to import response. Let's import response. return serializer.data. Okay, so what this function will do for now is get the list of all the sports from the database, give it to the serializer, and we return as a JSON response the serializer.data. But we also want to add a decorator here, which is important to know if the coming request is like a get method or a post method. So we add that here, and we need to import it from dot views from decorators. API. This is a list of the methods that we want to do. I'll also add an if method here because we also want to do like other methods going forward. I'm going to check if the coming request is a get method. Just to get. If it's a get method, we do these steps. Okay. So revising back, we have a model, we have a view which does all the logic, and we have a serializer which converts data to and fro. But we still want an endpoint. So I'm going to create a URL file. So this is going to be my application level URL. We also have a project level URL file here. For example, this has a path or an endpoint with admin, which opens the admin site for Django. But we also want it to have pointing to our application. So let's say sports, and we want it to, so anytime we hit a URL starting with sports, we want it to redirect towards the URLs in the sports app. So what we're going to do is use this include here. Sports to URLs. Okay, let's copy this and go in the sports URL file. So we don't want all of this. And we don't want this. So let's choose the path. And since we are listing the list of all the sports, let's say list. Here, and we want to import the function that we created. Sports views import why don't I see it? Import sports list. Sorry. It's from sports.views import sports list. So, okay. So what's going to happen here is on the project level, someone calls, for example, suppose we hit an endpoint like sports list. So the project is going to see its sports and it has to go to sports.urls. So it will go here and further further calculate it as a list and then go to this view that we have. So let's try to run the server, and to do that, what we have to do is python manage.py run server. Let me do it. So our server has started on port 8000. Let's go and access it. Localhost. And we go to sports list. So this is the web, like you can browse your APIs from this nice interface. Since we do not have anything in our database yet, so we do not get a response back. So let's go ahead and add a post method so that we can post some objects to the database. So let's go and say if request dot method is post. Now, since we are doing a post request, we also need to add it to the decorator here. So what we want to do with the post is we accept the data from the request, and then we pass it on to the serializer. We do validations and then post it to save it to the database. Right. So again, we use the same serializer. Serializer. And we pass it and we pass data to it. So the data comes in the request. So we access the data dictionary from the request and we pass it to the sports serializer. So before saving anything to the database, what serializer does is it also has its own validation methods. And before saving anything to the database, we need to check if the incoming request is valid or not. So serializer has an is valid method. This does all the validations and it creates a validated data dictionary. So only if it is valid, we do serializer.save. Right, and then we also return response with the data that we have created, which is again in the data dictionary. If it is not valid, this means that the incoming request is not as per the standards and it's a bad request. So we return the errors that the serializer will generate, and that is available in the .errors dictionary of the serializer. So before creating, we also have to make some modifications to the serializer. Since this is the main base class for the serializers, we have to override its create method. And we say return. And since we are posting data to the database, we also need the model here. So let's import that. Sports.models. So this is going to return our sports dot sports objects, and then we pass on the validated data dictionary to it. So the request came in as post. We gave the data to the serializer. The serializer checked if it is valid and it created the validated data dictionary. And the create method here would create the database instance with the validated data and return the response, which is in the data dictionary. So let's go ahead and go to the Chrome browser here and to the list. Now you can see that we have the section to post data. So let's create sample data here. Save name. Let's say football. description. I'm just going to give something lame here. Game with ball. And we had number of players. 11, I think. And we had also the type of sport, right? Yeah. So definitely outdoor. So post. Okay. So it says ID. This field is required. It's because in the serializer, if you remember, we added the ID field. But since this is generated by Django, we do not know it like way ahead of time. We can say that this is read only. Now we should not have that. Okay. Now we have successfully created this entry in the database. So this endpoint will give us capabilities to also get the data and also to post the data. If I create one more, let's go with cricket, bat, and ball. Also 11, also outdoor. Post. So we have new data created with ID 2. And if I hit the list, now we have like 2. So this is what we intended to do with the get method, like get the list of all the objects in the database, and it's working as expected. What we can also do is another HTTP method, like put, if we want to change data somehow in one of these objects. So I'm going to create a different function for it, because when you find an object in the database, you can either maybe just update it, delete it. So we are going to do that in the same function. Let's see. Define sports detail. Also, we are going to accept request as a parameter, and now we have an additional parameter, which is the primary key. In Django terms, we always refer it as a PK. So we are going to use this PK, which is going to be this ID, to find a particular instance from the database and then do different operations on it. So then, of course, we need this decorator again, but not post this time. First, we do get, so that we can get a particular object from the database. To do that, again, let's do the same thing. Sports equals to sports.objects. Then now we are not going to use the all method. We want to use the get, since we are fetching for only one particular instance. So this, and we say like if request method equals get. Again, we pass it to the serializer. So put serializer, and then we pass this. This time we don't have many of them, so many equals to true doesn't apply here. And then we return the response again. Which is serializer.data. All right, let's try this. If we go back here, and now one thing I forgot is adding a URL. We currently have only sports list, but what if we want to do just one of them, right? So it's going to be dynamic, and then we add a new path here, say details, detail, and it's also going to accept another parameter, which is the ID. So since it's an integer and it's a primary key, I'm going to name it like this. And then we want to include the function that we just created, which is sports detail. So now when we hit the endpoint with detail and the primary key, it should go to this view and then get the data from the database. So let's try this. Sports detail. Yeah, so we have the first one that we created, do two. Second one, so what we try to find something which is not existent. So it says sports matching query does not exist. So we can handle this exception here in the try except block. Except so if it does not exist, we just return response here. We can also introduce a status here, which also comes out of box with the REST framework. Dot status. So since we do not, for example, like we tried with ID 23 does not exist, so we can respond with a status not found. Like the HTTP method. Not found. Makes it look nicer. Let's try it again. So yeah, we have this HTTP method back to us. Now, what if we want to update this information? So we would need a put method for it. So let's go and try with that. Request.method equals put. Again, we are going to hit this first to get the instance that we want to update. Pass the data to the serializer again. And this time we also want to pass the instance that we want to update. So it's going to be sports and the data that we are trying to update. Data equals to request data. Again, before updating, we have to check if the serializer is valid like we did in the post method. So let's do that. Valid. And then we save. And return the response. Which is serializer.data. And also here we can return the status code if you want, like status.http 200. Okay. If not, we return the errors. Response serializer.errors with the status as say bad request, because since it's not valid, definitely there's something wrong with the request. In order to for the put method to work, we have to override the update method of the serializer. So this to update, we accept the instance and the validated data that the serializer validated, and then we have to write again the whole thing. And once we start using the model serializers, we wouldn't want to do this. It would become much easier. So now we go with the name and we say ask get. Try to get the name. if it's not trying to update the name, they still have to keep the name as it is. So name, just going to go ahead and copy this for the other fields. So we have description, number of players, and type of sport. Yeah. So we've checked all the fields that could come in for update, and we can save this instance now and also return it. Alright, I think that should be it for the put method. Let's go ahead and try. Okay, I don't see this. Let me restart the server. Ah, yes, I did not add it to the decorator. So it did identify like if the request coming, if there is a put method available on this request. So now we have this with an option to update update this object. So since we have hit the endpoint with ID 1, it gives us options to update this. So let's copy this and say we update the number of players, say 12, and we do it. Now you can see that the number of players is 12. So this is the put method. What if we want to delete this instance? The most easiest form of the API is the delete method. So we check the delete. First and foremost, let me add it here before I forget again. Delete. And all we do is delete this. Delete. That's it. We don't have to do anything else. And maybe we just want to return the response, like the HTTP code for the response, and say it's status dot. I think we have no contact. Yes, this one. Let's try it. So we have now this delete option coming in, and I want to delete this. So delete. Let's ask for the confirmation. Delete. And now if you go back to the list, you can see that it's no more present. We just have the second one. So this was the function-based view for the DRF. Do you want to take a 5-minute break before
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Yeah. I think you also can briefly summarize what you covered so far, because it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
If you can briefly summarize, then I think we have a 5-minute break and then we can continue.
Sure. So I started with creating a model. So this maps to the database table that we would create. So I created a sports model, and then I made a migration so that a file is created like this. I'll show it again, which makes a language that database can understand and create a table out of it. After that, we proceeded with the function-based views. And since, like in the presentation, we saw there are HTTP methods like get, post, put, delete. So what we did first is we wanted to get the list of all the objects from the database. So we did it with this statement here. So we got all the objects and we responded back with the serializer. And we did a post method here. And so what we got is like the data that the user has sent to us, and we passed it on to the serializer. We checked if it is valid. So valid in sense like for an char field, maybe someone enters an integer field and something like that. So we check the validation here, and only if it is valid, what DRF does is creates another dictionary which is called validated data. And if it's valid, then we actually save the object to the database. And that's what we did here. So we pass the validated data to the create function here and, and the data that we have. And it created an instance in the database. Then we moved to this function because we wanted to operate on a single instance of an object. That's why we searched for the instance from the database with this primary key, and then we did operations of get, put, and delete on it. So if we wanted to get like a single instance, we use this get method. Also, then we pass the instance to the serializer, and same in the put. We pass the instance and the data to the serializer. We did the same validation, and in the serializer, we had this update method to overwrite from the serializer base class for particularly for our objects. And then we saved it and we returned the response. And delete was the most simple one. We just got this instance from here and we deleted it. And we returned the response as HTTP 204. Yeah. And then we actually mapped this. So on the project level, like when we created a project DRF, we had this URLs file here. So anything that any endpoint that starts with sports, we want it to be redirected to the URLs files in the sports application. So that's what then we defined here. So if it's sports slash list, it should be directed to this view, and if it's sports that detail and the specific instance, it should be directed to the sports detail function. Yeah, that is what we did. And like after the break, I will show how we can reduce this, because this is a lot to do like for every day. So class-based views are more efficient and they are used more in our day-to-day life. And also we don't have to do these for serializations. We can simply use the model serializer, which will reduce a lot of this code. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Great. Now we can have the 5-minute break. Yeah, you can. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We saw you, then we didn't see you.
Okay. Okay. I think it's toggling a lot.
Yeah, it's okay. It's great. So literally, yeah, let's have this break. And then now it's 28 minutes. I don't know where, like in which time zone is everyone. So now there's like 1928. So let's get back in 5 minutes, which will be in Amsterdam time 1932.
Yeah.
And Swaranjali, just in case, you can stop sharing your screen for now. So you're free to do anything you want to do. And then we'll get back.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, you're welcome.
We are
Great. Great. Thanks a lot. So let's continue.
Yes. Okay. Something happened with the sharing screen. Let me try again.
What's up? Yeah, just retry again. It's okay. Just retry again. Make sure that you're sharing the not the Chrome.
Yeah.
Now we see, yes, great. Now we see the Visual Studio Code.
Okay. Yeah. So for the class-based views, I'm going to make another application so that it's easier to understand. Let me kick me out of the server right now, and I'm going to create another application, say restaurants. So I go back to Python manager.py, start app, restaurants. So we have another directory here called restaurants, also the same boilerplate structure. And we are going to start from models again. Let's do it quickly this time. So class restaurants models.model. Let's give restaurant a name. Models.carfield. Again, max length. Let's give it 100. Maybe a city. Models.carfield. Max length 100. Maybe a cuisine for the restaurant. Also Carfield. And maybe do an end fill for number of chefs. So models.integer field. All right, so this will create a database. This is a database model which will create a table named restaurants. Again, let's do a migration so that we have a table in the database. So Python manage.py make migrations. This will, hold on. Yes, again, we need to register it in the settings file in the project. So go back to settings and register the app that we created. Restaurants, and try it again. Make migrations. We have our migration file. We want to have a look. So this is our initial file which creates a model named restaurants with all these fields. So let's do a migrate. Now we can see it applied this file to the database. So we now have a database table. Let's close this. I'm going to close our old app. Okay. And we have this model. Let's go ahead and create the views. We are going to do class-based views now with the same format. We want the list of all the objects from the database for a restaurant. So let's do that. So class restaurant list, just like we named before. But the only difference here is going to be now we have to inherit the API view from DRF, which is a class-based view, which gives us all the functionality for the views, for the handler of the views. So let's do that from REST framework .views import API. This is the main view class from DRF, and we inherit from it. Now we don't have to do all the decorator and stuff like that. We can, and also we don't have to do the if if statements that we did before, like in the sports. So we were always checking here, like if the request of method is get. We don't have to do that with the class-based views. We can just write the get, and again we take request as the parameter. And this will obviously, since it's a class-based view, it would also take self. And we find the list of restaurants from our database with the query that we also did before, but this time it's going to be a different model. So let's import that from restaurants dot models, import restaurants, and we want to fetch all of them. So objects, which is again the our model manager, and we want all of them. So all, and now again we will need a serializer to pass on data to, right? But we don't have it right now. So let's create a file for the serializer. Serializers with Py, and let's import Rest Framework, import serializers, and let's do the class. So restaurants, restaurant serializer. And now we want to do model serializer. So we don't want to repeat each field from the model here. So model serializers make it easier for us. So what we want to do is inherit the model serializer here. And all we have to do is give the metadata for the serializer so that it points to the right model. And we can say model equals to the model that we created. So let's import that. Import restaurants. And we point it to this. And we also can choose the fields that we want to show to the user or pass it as a JSON response. So we can do fields, and we can say all, or we can the other way to do is like just say the fields that you want, like you just want the name or something like that. It can be a tuple or defining that, but for now we will keep like all the fields. So that's it. If you remember back in the sports, we had to do what is it? We had to describe all of this. All of this is gone, so we don't have to repeat what we already did in the models. Just point our serializer to the models. And now we are going to use it here. So let's import it first. Import restaurant serializer. And give it this, the data that we fetched from the database, restaurants, and again many equals to true, since it's not just one instance that we are getting. And return the response. I need to import that. Rest framework dot response, import response, and we can also do the status at the same time so that we can use it right away. Import status. And we return the serializer data, and we can also return the status. Everything is good. 200. Okay. Now we have our model, we have our views, and we have our serializer. The only thing we're missing is our URL, the endpoint that we want to hit. So let's create a URL .py for this application. Again, we are going to follow the same pattern. On the project level URL file, we define a path for the restaurants. So anything that starts with the restaurants will be redirected to the restaurants application. Include restaurants. That's all. And in the restaurants URL again, I'm going to copy this here. We don't need this, and we don't need this. We need the imports though. And we're going to follow the same pattern. So restaurants and list. So restaurant/list. So let's do the list here, and it should point to our view, this view that we created. So let's import that in the URLs. So from restaurants dot views, import restaurant list, and we point it here. And now we want to say that this class needs to act as a view. So we call as view method on this. So restaurant list. Let's try it out. Let's run the server. So Python manage.py run server. Let's go to our, so the URL that we defined was restaurants list. So we get this, since again we don't have anything on the database on the restaurants table, we get an empty list here. Let's go ahead and do the post. Really easy, the same thing. Define post, self, request, and we're going to do all over again the same thing. Maybe we can just copy from here. So we want to give serializer the data. We want to check if the serializer is valid and then save it. So let's do this, except we want to change our serializer here. That's it. If you remember, in the sports application, we had to define a create method here, but with the model serializer, we don't need to do it. So this again makes it a lot easier. Yeah, so let's go and try. We have post. Let's try to create some data. I think we had a name. Let's go restaurant 1. And what were the properties? I will go to city. See Amsterdam. And we had cuisine. Let's go Japanese. And number of chefs. 1 now. Yeah. Let's try this out. Post, and we have the database entry created. So works fine. Again, if we want to update this database entry or delete it, we can just go ahead and create the same that we created for the sports class. Let's do it quickly here. Restaurant detail, API view, and we are going to again need a get method. So these are the verbs that we can readily use. We don't have to do those if statements here. So request and the primary key, because we are going to update with this primary key. So let's accept the primary key here. I'm going to define all of them together. Primary key, delete. And now since we are going to fetch data based on this primary key from the database, we might as well do it as a function so that we can reuse it. So maybe get restaurant itself, and also do the try block here. So we want to return it. Return restaurants.objects.get pk equals to pk. So we want to accept another parameter, the primary key, and then return the object that we get. And in the accept, we do restaurants does not exist. We can release an HTTP 404 here, which is readily available from Django. So from Django.http, we can import this one. Again, something new. So let's raise this HTTP 404. And now let's get to the get method. So we want to get details of only one restaurant here, like number one. So let's do here, and we can get the details of that particular restaurant from this function. So let's do that. I'm going to name it as restaurant and self.get restaurant. Yeah. And we pass in the primary key that we got from the request. So this function will now return the restaurant from this for this primary key, and then we do again the same. We pass this to the serializer. I'm going to copy it from here and change our serializer and the value that we got from the statement above. That's it. Also, let's do the output statement together with this one. Again, we get this. We get the particular instance from the request, and we do same. We give now. We don't have to override the update method here. So also that saves us a lot of time. And let's try to update one of the fields from here. Before that, again, we have to pass a different endpoint for this. Let's do the same detail, which accepts the primary key that we want to update or modify or delete. And we need the class that we just created, restaurant detail dot as view. Yes, I think that should be it. Let's do it. Also list, and we want to see the details for the first restaurant, and let's modify this one. So I'm going to copy it from here and change the cuisine, maybe make it high and export. So now you can see that the cuisine is updated. So this is what our post method is, and the delete is again going to be the same, like easy. Just get the restaurant that we want to delete from here and delete. That's it. Like if I delete this now, okay, we have an error. Expected a response. Yeah, because I did not return a response here. Return response. Say no content again. Let's do this one. Let's try now. Oh, it already deleted in the background. It's just that we did not get the response back. So this was one. Let me create another so that we can try a bit. Okay. Name. I'm just going to give anything right now. City, Amsterdam, prison, occupy, and number of chefs is 1. Okay. So like I said before, Serializer has its own validations, but you can always add your own custom validations. And I can show you one right now. Like, if we want to, for example, validate the number of chefs, to run a restaurant, number of chefs should always be at least 1 or more than 1. So let's do a validation on the number of chefs. So when you put a field level validation in the serializers, it usually starts with validate and the name of the field. So this is our field name, and the data that we get from the user, it's passed to this validation, and we can just simply check like if data is less than 1, we can raise a validation error, which we can get from the serializers from the REST framework here. Import validation error. So let's raise it and just say number of chefs cannot be less than 1, right? And then we return the data. So let's try this out. I'm going to copy this. Not the ID field, of course. Yeah, let's try with 0 and another restaurant. Suppose you can validate this way, like any custom validations that we want. Also, serializers have you can add a serializer method field which can provide the custom representation of your object. So like for example, if I want to add a description to a restaurant, I can do here with serializer method field. And how the method fields work is you need to get the representation for this field from a method, and it usually starts with get and the field name that you use here. So get description and self and the object that you want to give back representation for. So let's say we return this restaurant is in this city, like so say restaurant, so object dot name, so this is the name of a restaurant, is in the city name, so object dot city. That's it. You can always customize this function name. For that you will need to give a method name here. By default it is none, so it goes to get underscore the field name. So now if we create a restaurant list, yeah. So now you see we get a description that we just added now. This wasn't part of our models, but we added this representation explicitly to our response. So this is the description that we get. Yeah, I think this is all about the class-based views and the model serializer. I will go through it once again. So if a user...
Yeah, just sum up. Yeah, is it possible to sum up? Because I would say our time is going down. We had some hiccups, so I think we could extend it maximum to additional like 5 minutes. So let's give you the possibility to sum up.
Yes.
Sum up what you mentioned, and then we give some space for the questions. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. So if a user hits an endpoint that starts with restaurants, it will go to the restaurants, the URLs file in the restaurants application. And then if you want to list, we go to this view, and we did like the usual methods, the get and post, where we pass data to the serializer, and and in turn we return the response. But since here we are using model serializer, we did not have to override the methods that we did in the previous app, which were like update and create. So this saves us a lot of code and time. And similarly, we did here, like if you want to get detail about a particular restaurant, we did it in this class. We had to get the instance from the database. We did it in the try except block here. And if we don't found it, we return simply the HTTP 404. The rest of the functionality remains the same. And extra validations in the serializers, we have so Serializer has its own validation, but you can always add your custom validations. So this is one of the field level validation that I explained to check the number of chefs. Uh, and it starts with validate and the field name that you decide to validate. And to change the representation or add additional representation to your serializer, you can always use the serializer method field and return the object representation like you want. Here we just returned a string saying this restaurant is in this city. Yeah, I think that would be the sum of all.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. So for anyone who have still 5 minutes to ask a question, feel comfortable to put them in the chat, or like you can literally unmute yourself and ask the question. So while we're waiting for people to think about, I have a personal question. In your case, when you, let's say, start using Django Rest Framework, you mentioned that it takes a lot of time. For you personally, like what was the speed up of development in your case, and simplicity of development?
From specifically for Django Rest Framework, I would say like having prior knowledge about Django framework is like really necessary, because it takes a lot of factors from Django. Like we saw URLs and views, these all come from Django. The serializer is like a special representation from the REST framework that is very powerful, like we saw. And it's just like the basics that I gave, but there is so much about class-based views that is in the serializers. So you can really make your APIs powerful with that. But yes, of course, knowing Django and Python is the best.
Great. Let's see whether there are any questions that we have. We check in also for those who are watching right now the stream, because we redirected a couple people to the stream. So let's see. So far, yeah, great job. Thank you so much for sharing knowledge and each step explained in detail. Great details, great job. So that's what we are getting on YouTube right now. So I would like to thank you, because despite all some nasty stuff in the very beginning, we apologize for that. We realized, it was like testing a new feature in production. Literally, there was a new feature appeared, which was blocked. Like in 2020, it was blocked, but then they added. So the feature calls kick out, and it doesn't matter which rights you have, moderator or not, it just kicks you out. So that's what happens. But thanks a lot also to Bhumika for guarding the rest of the workshop.
Yes.
Thanks a lot. I see that a lot of claps, so we can just make these claps audible for you.
Thank you.
Really great job. Yeah, I think then if there is no question, that's going to conclude our session for today. And a quick reminder, you can save the next date in your agenda. It's 23 of February. It will be in-person event dedicated to MLOps. It will be talks format, which we usually do once or twice per year. And then at the 2nd of March, it will be a part of Global AI Bootcamp. So that's literally the two things that are upcoming. So thanks a lot. I think for Bhumika, we can stop